Hello and welcome to Shooting the Breeze episode 10, the formal gun podcast of WaltonPA.com. Well, we are with episode 10. This was my mini goal, or the first goal that I wanted to reach with 10 episodes of the podcast in the books. The plan was to get party hats, noisemakers, and to make a big celebration out of it. Unfortunately, this is probably going to be one of the least energetic videos, if you will. I'm recording this video a little early. It's Sunday night. Generally, I record on Monday nights, and I'm feeling a little under the weather. A little bit of congestion, that little twinge in the back of my throat that tells me a sore throat will probably greet me tomorrow morning. And I thought, you know what? If I don't get this podcast recorded tonight while I still can, I'm definitely not going to be able to do the cigar and drink pairing like I like to do in every episode. And chances of me wanting to sit down and do it tomorrow are really slim. So I threw the last of the featured topics together for this episode. I had all the news taken care of. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do for a topic of discussion. However, I had it narrowed down to one or two different topics, and I decided what was going to happen for the show last minute, and here we are now. I can hear it. I can hear my voice, a little bit of congestion. So this should be an interesting podcast. But anyway, I've got to get my cigar lit, and I guess we'll get this show on the road. Just like all the other podcasts I've done, the first thing we need to do is cover the news. Now, all of the news I have for you in this episode came from earlier on in the week. There was a lot of really good stuff that I found, I don't know, late last week, middle of last week, and it really started piling up. So I was able to get the news stuff out of the way early. So some of this may be a little dated, but I think it's pretty interesting nonetheless. Now, the first piece of news I have for you is from Fox News, and this is an opinion piece, but even though it's an opinion piece, I thought it was kind of interesting anyway. And it is entitled, "Media Silence is Deafening About Important Gun News" by John Lott, published September 30th, 2011. So, let's get started. Excuse me. Murder and violent crime rates were supposed to soar after the Supreme Court struck down gun control laws in Chicago and Washington, D.C. Politicians predicted disaster. More handguns in the District of Columbia will only lead to more handgun violence. Washington Mayor's Adrian Fenty warned the day the court made its decision. Chicago's Mayor Daley predicted that we would go back to the Old West. You would have a gun, I have a gun, and we'll settle it in the streets. The New York Times even editorialized this month about the Supreme Court's unwise decision that there is a right for the people to keep guns in the home. But Armageddon never happened. Newly released data for Chicago shows that, as in Washington, murder and gun crime rates didn't rise after the bans were eliminated. They plummeted. They have fallen much more than the national crime rate. Not surprisingly, the national media have been completely silent about this news. One can only imagine the coverage if crime rates would have risen. In the first 6 months of this year, there were 14% fewer murders in Chicago compared to the first 6 months of last year, back when owning handguns was illegal. It was the largest drop in Chicago's murder rate since the handgun ban went into effect in 1982. Meanwhile, the other four most populous cities saw a total drop at the same time of only 6%. Similarly, in the year after the 2008 Heller decision, the murder rate fell 2.5 times faster in Washington than in the rest of the country. It also fell more than 3 times as fast as in other cities that are close to Washington's size, and murders in Washington have continued to fall. If you compare the first 6 months of this year to the first 6 months of 2008, the same time immediately preceding the Supreme Court's late June Heller decision, murders have now fallen by 34%. Gun crimes also fell more than non-gun crimes. Robberies with guns fell by 25%, while robberies without guns have fallen by 8%. assaults with guns fell by 37%, while assaults without guns fell by 12%. Just as with right-to-carry laws, when law-abiding citizens have guns, some criminals stop carrying theirs. The benefit could have been even greater. Getting a handgun permit in Chicago and Washington is an expensive and difficult process, meaning only the relatively wealthy go through it. Through the end of May, only 2,144 people had handguns registered in Chicago. That limits the benefits for the Supreme Court decision, since it is the poor who are most likely victims of crime and who benefit the most from being able to protect themselves. The biggest change for Washington was the Supreme Court striking down the law, making it illegal to have a loaded gun. Over 70,000 people have permits for long guns that they can now legally use to protect themselves. Lower crime rates in Chicago and Washington by themselves don't prove that gun control increases murders, even when combined with the quite familiar story of how their murder rates soared and stayed high after gun bans were imposed. But these aren't isolated examples. Around the world, whenever guns are banned, murder rates rise. Gun control advocates explain the huge increase in murder and violent crime rates in Chicago and Washington by saying that those bans weren't failed tests unless the entire country adopted a ban. Yet even island nations, such as Ireland and the UK, with no neighbors to blame, have seen increases in murder rates. The same horror stories about blood in the streets have surrounded the debate over concealed handguns. Some said it was necessary to ban guns in public places. The horror stories have never come true, and the data is now obvious that as of November, only one state, Illinois, will still completely ban law-abiding from carrying concealed handguns. 41 states will have either permissive right-to-carry laws or no longer require a permit. The regulations that still exist in Chicago and Washington primarily disarm the most likely victims of crime. Hopefully, even the poor in these areas will soon also have more of an opportunity to defend themselves too. So that is the end of the article. And generally, I don't like posting, or I don't like featuring news articles that use a lot of facts, or not so much facts, but statistics, because you can always skew numbers and play with numbers to make them sound like they're in your favor, and regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, I'm not a big fan of news that is just chock full of numbers. It's like watching the TV commercials. 3 out of 5 dentists recommend such and such. Well, 3 out of 5 sounds great. Well, 3 out of 5 is 80%. It doesn't sound so great anymore. So you can twist the numbers a little bit. They're still the same numbers, but you can make them seem as though they're more in your favor. And while I agree with the message, and I understand, and I feel as though this individual is right, that obviously, in my mind, when you legalize the carrying of weapons, or you legalize the use of weapons for law-abiding citizens to defend themselves, crime, in my mind, would drop. I mean, if I were a criminal, I'd be going after, the easiest victim. I don't want to have a gun pulled on me in the middle of a robbery. I'm supposed to be the dominant one. I'm the criminal here. I need the upper hand. And if there's potential for the victim, the person I'm going to rob, to pull a gun out on me, well, that just may change my opinion. So in my mind, this article makes perfect sense. I don't really care for stuff that's chock full of numbers. Again, I agree with the message and all that good stuff. I don't like lots of statistics inside of. I don't like a lot of statistics to try to prove a point. I always feel as though there's some underlying thing that's being covered up, but maybe that's just my little tinfoil hat paranoia going on. But anyway, my congestion's kicking in. This cigar is probably not helping, and the glass of booze I have sitting beside me is probably not going to make things any better. But in my mind, I'm going to sip on that booze, and it's going to kill off whatever germs I've got going on. And in a perfect world, that would be right. But it's probably only going to make this worse. But you know what? It is what it is. We're going to soldier on through this podcast, even if I start sneezing and blowing my nose and everything else. So let's soldier on to topic number 2. And with any luck, it's not that long, but I think it is. All right, the next news article that I have for you comes from the Washington Times. Now, I was really debating on whether or not I wanted to include this. Initially, when I put this in the show notes, I was really pumped up and I was excited to put it in here. However, since putting it in the show notes, I'm seeing it pop up all over the place. And, I'm getting that little bit of a feeling where this may be a little overused at this point, and I would just be piling on. I mean, it's a good piece of information, but, by now I'm sure you've heard of it, and you probably know more about it than what's in this little news article. So, without further ado, this comes from the Washington Times, and excuse me, it is entitled "Miller, Emily Gets Her Gun." I want a gun. I don't feel safe living in Washington, D.C. and want to protect myself. I'm starting today by going down to City Hall to find the gun permit office to tell them I want a gun. This series will follow me as I navigate the city bureaucracy and outdated rules in order to legally buy a firearm. My desire for a gun started when I had to face down over a dozen criminals on an empty cul-de-sac in Washington, armed with only a BlackBerry. It was New Year's Day 2010, and I'd been staying in the house to dog sit for friends who were on vacation. I returned from walking the dog when I saw a man coming from the house. "What are you doing?" I asked, sensing something was off with the situation. The golden retriever just stood next to me with a slack leash. "We're here to clean the pool," the man said. He looked nervous and his eyes were bloodshot. I was pretty sure my friends hadn't called the swimming pool emergency during the middle of winter. "No, we didn't call for you," I said. "Oh, then it must be the house next door," he said, smiling nervously. He turned and walked away quickly. I'd left the front door unlocked since I was walking the dog for less than 10 minutes. I know, lesson learned. After the man left, I was still suspicious, so I went inside, grabbed my BlackBerry, and clicked on the icon for the camera. I walked down the street, and as I turned the corner, I saw about 15 scruffy young men standing around two pickup trucks. We were at the end of a woody, dead-end road. I nervously held up my BlackBerry to take a quick photo of them and the license plates. Suddenly, the bloodshot-eyed guy darted out, blocking the shot. "What are you doing?" he asked. I looked around at all the men staring at me and was suddenly scared. "Nothing. I'm just going now," I said as I put my BlackBerry down instead of taking the picture around him and went home. Hours later, I was at a New Year's Day party when my phone rang. It was my credit card company asking if my card was in my possession because there were odd charges on it. I looked at my wallet and saw that all my cash was gone and the cards. It suddenly dawned on me that the poor guy had been inside the house. I called 911 and the DC police met me at the house. When they heard the story, they called in a detective. I got a long lecture about facing down criminals alone. They searched the big house top to bottom to look for windows or doors left unlocked by the guys to come back for more. Now I was scared. I had promised to watch my friend's dog, which meant I was spending the night. I was alone in an empty house with a useless dog. I spent the night in the master bedroom with the dresser pushed up against the inside of the door. I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking how safer I would feel if I had a gun next to the bed. The next day, I took to Twitter to ask about how to get a gun. The replies were disappointing. No Second Amendment in D.C. Only one guy can sell weapons in D.C. Good luck with that. Call the NRA. I knew the Supreme Court had recently overturned the Washington's gun ban, but what I didn't understand was why gun owners were so down on my idea. My friends came back the next day, but I still wondered why I couldn't get a gun. The following summer, D.C. mayoral candidate and the then City Council Chairman Vincent Gray was at my neighborhood picnic. I approached Mr. Gray, and as he was glad handing in the basket courts, I told him that I wanted two things: to stop the parking ticket assault in this city and a gun. His smile faded. "And what?" he asked, leaning down to hear me. "A gun. I want a gun," I said emphatically. I don't know what's going on in this city, but apparently no one is listening to the Supreme Court. "Well, Emily, is it? Let me introduce you to my campaign chairman," Mr. Gray said, leading me away toward a guy with a clipboard. That would be the politician's equivalent to talk to the hand. Mr. Gray went on to be elected mayor of D.C. Recently, current City Council Chairman Kwame Brown came to the Washington Times for a roundtable interview. After he had been asked about the budget, lottery, ethics, and education, I raised my hand. Can I ask you about guns in D.C.? You say guns? The chairman asked. Guns, I replied as I held up both hands in the shape of a handgun, like they do in Charlie's Angels. Oh, you use both fingers, Mr. Brown said, laughing. You're a shooter. You use both of them. I didn't laugh at him. Well, I'm trying to get a gun, I said. You're trying to get a gun, he repeated. This is not going to be easy. I want a gun to protect myself, but it seems my city government officials may work against me. There's only one way to find out if that's the case, and that by going through all of the hoops. Keep watching this space or follow me on Twitter to see how the story unfolds. Emily Gets Her Gun is a new series following the senior editor, Emily Miller, as she legally tries to get her hands on a gun in the nation's capital. You can also follow her live tweets from inside the city bureaucracy at Emily Miller. So this is a pretty interesting endeavor. We have a woman that obviously feels as though she needs a gun, and I completely agree with her. However, I don't know, following the bad guy down the street and taking a picture with my camera phone, well, a BlackBerry isn't this big monstrosity of a Droid X, but if I were to see a crime take place and I were to grab my phone and switch on the camera, I'm actually going to try to do this for you without taking forever. So I'm walking down the street, I turn on the camera, I hold it up, hit the button. Oh great, it's too bright in here, so you don't get that really bright dual LED flash that you would get from this camera, but you do hear the shutter click, and it's an electronic click. But I don't know that I could be sneaky with this phone. It's got dual LEDs. It's really, really bright, and it'd be hard to sneak up on someone to take a picture with it. So, and my BlackBerry was kind of the same way. It was kind of noisy, although I think you could turn the shutter snap off. But in any case, you know, it's to sneak up on a group of guys and try to take a picture of them because you think they're committing a crime, maybe putting yourself in danger. I think at that point I would have just called the police rather than try to track them down, or maybe get on the phone from a distance and try to explain everything so that in the event that I was confronted, I was on the phone with a 911 operator. But you know, regardless of what, you know, the whole Monday morning quarterback kind of thing that I'm doing here, however that turns out, you know, she was protecting herself. She's trying to protect the home, and it turns out that she was robbed. Her cash, her credit cards were gone, and she wound up sleeping in a bedroom with a dresser pushed up against the door. No one should have to do that. Regardless of where you live, you should be able to feel safe in your own home. And if that means going out and purchasing a gun, then so be it. You know, you do what you need to do to feel safe. And even though guns are legal in DC, it sounds like it's a whole lot of hoops to jump through in order to get one. So I've been following Emily on Twitter, and you know, I read this article. There were a couple of blog posts about this, about the gun that she's holding in this photo, which isn't hers, by the way. And you know, it seems like this is getting a lot of buzz. I believe she was on Cam and Company from the NRA News. There's been some tweets from the NRA about this, so this is a really big deal. It seems this news article is getting a lot of traction, and it's really interesting. I'm curious to see how this goes. You know, I wish her the best of luck. I hope she is legally able to acquire a gun, and you know, the best of luck, Emily. Well, it's time for the last news article of the episode. And this one comes from Canada, and this is from the Gazette, MontrealGazette.com, and this is another opinion piece, and I believe it's an opinion piece, but it goes on to say, gun control homicide rates are not linked. Study. So it's a study. It's a news study. It's a study, not an opinion piece. But I can tell you right now that I'm going to fall all over some of these French Canadian names. And I've only been able to read this article once. A lot of these news pieces I read 2 and 3 times just to make sure that I've got everything down as far as what the message is and things. So this seems pro-gun. So I've only read it once. From what I understand, or from what I remember, this is pro-gun. So Let's hope it's pro-gun now that I read it again. So at any rate, this is written by Tristan Hopper, Post Media News, published October 7th, 2011. And it goes on to say, Canada's firearm homicide rate has been in a free fall since the 1970s. In 1974, 273 Canadians were murdered with a gun. In 2008, despite having a higher population, guns killed 200 Canadians. Even in the past 15 years, homicides by rifle have dropped by 50%, and firearm homicides against women have dropped 30%, as opposed to a 16% decline in general female murders. But Langman's study attributes Canada's drop in gun crimes to a richer, older population rather than any particular piece of gun control. If people are poorer and there's less income quality, those are more likely to be associated with an increase in homicides by firearms, said Langman. His analysis factored in other variables associated with criminality, such as unemployment, incarceration rates, income equality, and the population attributed to immigration. The study also factored in the rate of non-firearm homicide rates and allowed multi-year delays for firearm legislations to take effect. The team then ran the data through 3 methods of statistical analysis, including JoinPoint, a software program often used to probe the success of cancer interventions. All 3 methods of analysis, wrote Langman, failed to definitively demonstrate an association between firearm legislation and homicide between 1974 and 2008. We have the same numbers, and we found the opposite, said Amelia Balagarian, communications coordinator for the Coalition for Gun Control. A University de Montreal study published January in the Canadian Journal of Criminology and Justice similarly examined Canadian firearm homicide rates since 1974. The study also factored in external influences such as immigration populations, the proportion of young men between the ages of 15 and 24, and the per capita consumption of beer. That study, however, found that Canadian gun legislation was responsible for 5% to 10% drops in firearm homicides. Notably, Langman's study also does not cover suicide, which amounts to nearly 3/4 of all firearms-related deaths in Canada. Last year, a Quebec Institute of Health study also joining JoinPoint analysis found that male suicide rates declined notably following the introduction of firearms legislation. Balagarian also noted Langman's history of advocating against gun legislation. In 2010, he took a stand against the Canadian Association of Emergency Room Physicians' resolution in support of the registry. The gun registry has hurt and killed people, wrote Langman in a widely circulated May 2010 letter. Langman's Facebook page also notes his membership in the online groups for the National Rifle Association and against the gun registry. The precise effects of firearms legislation can be difficult to quantify. For instance, studies to examine whether Bill C-51 requiring a criminal records check had any effect on suicides have produced widely different results. Early studies showed no effect. In 1993, a study from the New Jersey-based Center for the Study of Suicide found that restricting easy access to lethal methods of suicide may assist in reducing suicide. A study from Toronto, meanwhile, found that in the wake of C-51, suicidal individuals had found other non-firearm ways of killing themselves. I still can't get my head completely wrapped around this article. I don't know whether it's a little bit of this cold setting in, but the last sentence of this seems to make the most sense. Suicidal individuals had found other non-firearm ways of killing themselves. Well, duh. Anyone hell-bent on doing something will find a way to do it if the primary way of doing it is restrictive or banned. So if you want to commit suicide, the easiest way to do it would be by gun. However, it's very difficult to commit suicide with a gun in Canada. So you swallow a handful of pills, or you slit your wrists, or you do whatever you need to do to get the deed done. And I would imagine the same thing goes for murder and things like that. If an individual is hell-bent on killing someone, just because they don't have a gun doesn't mean that they're not going to go through with it. So if if someone is serious about committing murder and it's premeditated and they don't have a gun to commit murder with, they'll just find some other means to commit murder. It just seems to make sense to me. That's what seems to make the most sense to me. Anyway, again, I can't get my head completely around this article, and I'm not quite sure why, but there is the article. From the title, it sounds semi-pro-gun, so I thought, what the hell, I'll read it anyway. So that is going to close out the news. I'm going to roll into featured stuff, talk a little bit about a featured discussion topic, and that will close out the show. So sit tight, and we'll get rolling on segment 2. Alright, well, in this part of the show, I talk about featured content. And basically what that means is I just open up Google Reader, and I start browsing through the ever-growing list of gun blogs, and I just pick out some of the interesting content and I feature it here in this little segment. Now, the first piece of featured content that I have, I didn't quite fully understand it when I first saw it. I mean, when I first saw the picture, I got all excited and I thought, wow, how cool is that? And then it wasn't until I actually read the post that I understand what I was looking at. And this featured content comes from the Firearm blog. And I did see who it was written by, but now I don't see it anymore. I'd have to pull up Google Reader to do that. Steve from the Firearm blog. He talks about this 1911 inspired knife, and he's got some photographs on it. And the head of the article says, Mark Knapp has designed a 1911 knife. It has an 8-inch long blade attached to a 1911 grip. The grip holds a 1911 magazine, and inside the magazine there is a Leatherman Micro, magnesium fire starter, needle, synthetic sinew, and 145 round. How cool is that? Well, personally, I think that is really cool. When I first saw the pictures of it, I totally blew past the Leatherman Micro and the sinew and stuff like that, and I was thinking that this knife was basically a spare magazine for your 1911. There's a little mag release button on the knife, just like on a 1911 pistol. You just hit the button, the magazine pops out the bottom, and here I am thinking, well, there's 8 rounds of 45 in here, or 7 rounds, or 9, or whatever's in a 1911. I don't own one, so I'm not quite sure what a 1911 holds, but I'm getting all excited. I'm thinking, wow, this is a great way to carry a blade and an extra magazine all in one. But it only carries 1 round. Either way, it's a pretty badass knife. It looks like it comes in a variety of different designs. It looks like maybe digital camo, just some really cool stuff. Your basic sort of military looking 1911 grips, green. But all in all, it's a really cool knife. I'm not really into carrying fixed blade knives because of how large they are. I like small folders. But if I was a 1911 fanatic, like many people are, this is definitely something that I would want to add to my collection. It's just a really cool accessory, and it appears to be a great survival tool for all the extras that it carries along with it. Just looking at it, I wonder if you could slip a full magazine in there. I don't know whether you could or not, or whether there's how it's designed or how heavy it would make the knife. But it's a cool knife, just a cool thing to have, I think. Check it out, and there's a bunch of pictures and some additional information on this particular knife. If you're interested, head over to the Firearm blog and check it out. Alright, so the second piece of featured content that I have for you is not actually on guns. It's actually on camping and stuff, but I guess it was a couple of weeks ago. I was on the PAFOA, the Pennsylvania Firearm Owners Association forum, and I came across someone that posted video on how to mount a Kodak camera digital video recorder to a compound bow. And they were going to use it for hunting and stuff, and I thought that was really cool. I clicked through to the blog, I subscribed to the RSS feed, and I've been keeping an eye on it. There's been some shooting videos posted, some hunting videos, the retrofitting this camera to a compound bow. There was that video, and then there was this one on camping that I thought was really interesting. It's bivouac camp and survival skill priorities, firewood and making shelter. And basically, there's two guys. It's No More Op 4 and Bone Hunter. who load up a couple of packs and hit the woods, and they go through how to set up camp and, you know, what they're doing, and it starts raining when they get there, so the priorities change a little bit in the way they're doing things. Or, you know, they're trying to stay dry. They're from the looks of the video, they're kind of in the middle of nowhere. They had to hike several miles into camp, so you know, setting up the camp was vital to, you know, staying dry and staying warm, and instead of trying to hike the night back out to the truck to go home or whatever. But there was some really interesting stuff in the video. And I even though I'm not much of an outdoorsman, I mean, I've never hunted a day in my life. I am going for the Pennsylvania Hunter Safety Course next week, which should be interesting. And, you know, I've only ever camped when I was younger, and basically that was hopping into the RV with my grandfather, pulling up into a campsite, unloading, you know, the propane powered stove, and having, you know, pancakes and waffles in the morning on non-stick skillets. You know, it wasn't hard living by any means. And, you know, I've always been fascinated by shows like Dual Survival and Survivor Man. You know, I don't like the other guy, Bear Grylls, but you know, seeing Les Stroud set up a camp, and seeing Cody Lundin and Dave something or other set up camp and do things out in the middle of nowhere has always been very interesting to me. And you know, at some point in my life, I would love to get out there and give it a try. And watching this video was really cool and kind of eye-opening to see some of the things that are required of you, you know, to stay safe, stay dry, stay warm when you're kind of in the middle of the woods, you know, with no one around to help you and things like that. So definitely check out the video if you're into that outdoor camping, you know, that outdoor lifestyle. There's some really cool stuff in there, and it looks like it's about 15 minutes long. I watched it from start to finish and found the whole thing interesting and fun to watch. So check out the No More Op4 blog and the video associated with it in this particular bivouac camp and survival skill priorities post. Well, it is time for the last piece of featured content, and this comes from Masad Ayub over at Backwoods Home Magazine. Now, I actually came across a link to this article from Mass's blog, which I have an RSS subscription to. And he gave a little bit of a teaser for the article. So I clicked through and I started reading it, and it's a really long, in-depth article on fitting firearms to women. It's entitled Tailoring Guns to Females. And basically, Mass starts out by saying that, you know, shortly, you know, right before he starts writing this article, he had just gotten off the witness stand for a trial in which a woman fired, she shot an abusive husband, or an estranged husband, and, you know, she was in a really bad situation, and, you know, he had been beating on her, and, you know, she felt as though he was going for a weapon. She pulled her own, she fired at him, and lo and behold, it winds up in court, and Mass is on the witness stand as an expert witness on firearms and people defending themselves and things like that. And then he leads into why guns should be properly fitted to the people using them, and in this case, females. And he goes through a variety of things, you know, talking about physical differences, shortening rifle and shotguns to properly fit, how to fit a handgun to a female, adjustable grip pistols. I'm just sort of paging through this quickly, looking at the bullet points, and pool firearms, and basically surmises, you know, why it's important to fit the weapon to the individual. And I think this is a really interesting article, and it doesn't only apply to women. I think that a lot of times it comes up as, well, you definitely need to fit women to guns because, you know, little women can't handle big guns and things like that, and that seems to be the mentality. But, you know, the same thing applies to men. Certain pistols simply do not fit certain men, and even if you take out the word female and you look at this as as a generalized article, it's pretty interesting, and it works, you know, for both sexes. The importance of fitting a firearm to both sexes comes out in this article. So it's well written. I love reading Masad Ayoub's stuff, and it's definitely something you should read, regardless of whether or not you have a woman in your life that needs a firearm fitted to them, or if you're a woman looking to fit a firearm to yourself. You know, I think this is a valuable read all the way around. So it's definitely lengthy, but again, it's well written and it's packed with information. So go check it out at Backwood Home Magazine. Well, now it is time for the cigar and drink pairing of the evening. And as I mentioned earlier on in this video, this is kind of being done, you know, I don't want to say last minute, but I'm doing it a little earlier than usual, just because I'm starting to feel a little under the weather, and I can feel a cold coming on. So ideally, I would have done this video tomorrow, and I would have done it with a different cigar. And the reason I didn't do it with that cigar tonight is because that box of cigars that I ordered should be arriving tomorrow, and I was planning on featuring the EP Carrillo Core Line Maduro. I ordered a box from Mike over at Buckhead Cigar down in Atlanta, Georgia, and I wasn't expecting it until tomorrow. But you know, because I'm feeling a little under the weather and I don't have that box of cigars handy, I had to find something for tonight. And I picked up a bag of stuff that I had from Buckhead, and I started looking through it, and I decided to go with the La Flor Dominicana Colorado Oscuro. And of course, I'm really horrible at timing these things. I just pop the band off, otherwise I'd hold it up to the camera and show it to you. But La Flor Dominicana has a reputation for making some real powerhouse cigars, and I knew by picking this cigar up that I would definitely be able to taste it. You know, when you start getting a little congested and you can feel a cold coming on, it's not a great idea to smoke a cigar, but because this podcast has a cigar and drink pairing in it, I felt obligated to do that. So I selected a cigar that I knew would be very powerful and would push through that bit of congestion. And La Flor Dominicana product is definitely that type of cigar. This particular one is very bold. It punches in the sinus hard. It's very spicy. It's a full-bodied cigar. It coats the palate well. It's smoking really well up until just a few minutes ago. I got a little bit of a void in the filler that I'm fighting with, and the cigar is not burning properly, so I'm touching it up a lot. It tastes like there's a lot of Ligero in the cigar. The smoke is really thick, and it leaves kind of like a molasses texture on the walls of the mouth, the palate and tongue. And I can definitely taste it over a little bit of congestion. You know, it's kind of difficult to pick out the finer points of the cigar. What I can taste is definite spiciness, a little bit of pepper, and that's about it. I'm not able to grab any of the finer points out of it. This is the second one that I've smoked. The first one was really good, very powerful, but really good. And if I would have done any show prep prior to this, and if I had known I was doing this cigar, I would have got some information on it in terms of makeup and things like that. I know it's made in the Dominican Republic because that's where the La Flor Dominicana factory is. This is listed as a Colorado Oscuro, so I would imagine it is an Oscuro / double Maduro wrapper. And I'm not getting any bitterness, coffee, or chocolate notes out of it. Again, you know, I can't really taste the finer points because of this little bit of congestion. But it's a good, powerful cigar, and you know, it's just as good as the double Ligero. Actually, I think this is a little better than the double Ligero stuff from La Flor Dominicana, but not something that I would smoke early on in the day. It's not something that I would smoke if I were a mild-bodied cigar person. And the beverage that I'm pairing it up with is a little bit of Mount Gay rum from Barbados. It's got a little bit of sweetness, but it's got kind of a bourbon bite to it. Now, again, I'm telling you, I'm feeling a little under the weather, so, you know, why in the world am I battering my body with tobacco and booze? But I'm hoping that the booze will kill off any germs that I've got going on in my mouth and throat and stuff. So I opted for that over coffee or anything else. Now, as I mentioned, the rum has got a little bit of sweetness to it, so it works really well with the cigar. It goes It brings out some of the spiciness in the cigar. And that's really all I've got to say about it, because I think I talked about this rum in an earlier episode, so I don't want to go crazy, and it looks like I'm approaching 5 minutes. So to wrap this up, this cigar came from Buckhead Cigar down in Atlanta, Georgia. Mike is my preferred retailer ever since my local cigar shop closed. Even though Mike is all the way down in Atlanta and I'm in Pennsylvania, I consider Mike my local cigar shop. He is a small shop in Atlanta, and he's just where I buy my stuff. Everything that I've gotten from Mike has been packaged really well, and it arrives in great shape. I can light it up right out of the box, and I have no issues with it. So if you're interested in trying the La Flor Dominicana Colorado Oscuro, you can head over to AskTheCigarGuys.com, where Mike has some pricing information on cigars that are on sale. You can contact Mike on Twitter, which is @BuckheadCigar, or you can give him a call at, oh crap, I don't remember whether it's 484 or 404. I think it's 484-844-0400. Oh, that sucks. I had that number memorized because I was using it so often. Just have to look at my notes real quick. 404-844-0400. So hopefully I didn't bomb Mike's phone number too bad. But there's your cigar and drink pairing for the episode. It's about time for me to cover the discussion topic and wrap up this episode. So sit tight and we'll get started on the last leg of the show. Alright, well now it is time to do the discussion topic of the episode. Now, as I mentioned time and time again, I'm doing this show a little bit earlier than I would have liked, which results in the topic not being what I anticipated. Now, earlier this week I was talking on, I don't remember whether I was talking on the Gun Rights Radio Network forum or on Twitter with Jason of the Empty Mags podcast, but the topic of shot timers came up, and I made mention that I downloaded this Shot Timer Pro app for my phone. It was a premium app. I think it cost me $10. And Jason asked me if I was going to review it on either my blog or on the podcast, because he was planning on doing a show where he was going to talk about technology and shooting, and he would like to reference that review if I were going to do one. So I told him, yeah, you know, if the weather cooperates, I wanted to go to the range this weekend and test out that app, because I haven't been able to do any live fire with it. I was only able to do dry fire practice with the app. So we talked a little bit more, and this weekend, or this whole week, ended up being hellishly busy and just not a very good week in general. It's been very stressful, and Saturday morning rolled around. I wasn't able to get to the range like I anticipated, and it really came down to the wire on getting to the range. I had very limited time, and the cutoff date for this Pistol Forum weekly drill that I wanted to participate in was ending tomorrow. So it was either get to the range for a short period of time today, or not test this app and not submit that drill. So I got to the range. I was only able to spend about a half an hour there, and I couldn't test the app properly. A few weeks ago I was getting in my car and I broke the plastic clip for my phone. So now I have no belt clip for my Droid X. And that posed a problem at the range today, because I wasn't able to actually clip the phone to my person during during live fire for the drill. So the phone was sitting on a table, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet away from me, and the first string of shots, it recorded 1 of 10 rounds. So I recalibrated it, I did it all over again for the second string of fire, and it recorded 7 of 10 rounds. And I think the problem was that the phone was too far away and it wasn't properly calibrated. So if I can calibrate it again while on my person, I think the phone will work a lot better, or the app will work a lot better. So for the time being, you know, I wasn't able to test the app properly, so I needed to come up with a new topic for this particular show. And it wasn't until later today that I finally decided on that topic, which was the Rangelog website and my usage of it. And I was entering data from that range trip into Rangelog, and I thought, you know what, I might as well just sort of turn this discussion topic around and talk more about this software, or this website, instead of the app that I've got incomplete data for. So let's talk about rangelog.com. Now, I first learned about this website a few weeks ago on the Empty Mags podcast. I believe Jason was interviewing one of the members of Rangelog, or the creator of Rangelog, and it sounded really interesting. Basically, it's an online database that allows you to enter just a ton of information. You can keep a record of all your firearms, your ammunition, your live fire drills, your dry fire drills. If you're a reloader, you can enter reloading information into the website. You can pull drills that other people share and log that information. Cleaning logs. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff that this website does. So a few weeks ago, I signed up for it. I got a username, I got a password, and then I downloaded the Android app for my phone. Now, the Android app is a paid app, and I'm not really crazy about how that works, but I paid for the app on my phone, and I began entering information with my phone. Now, along the way, some information was lost, and I wound up getting really frustrated with the Android app, so I uninstalled it. After I uninstalled it, I got a little message from the Android market asking me if I wanted to request a refund. I'm kind of agitated at this point, so of course I want a refund. Yeah, sure. I click the button, and I just completely dismiss it. The app is no longer on my phone. I'll just figure on something on the website at a later date. And I was updating some stuff later on, and the Rangelog app was showing in my Android market purchases. Apparently a refund wasn't given, and I still had the app. I thought, well, you know, I've already paid for it. I might as well put it back on my phone and give it another try. So I put it back on my phone. I'm playing with it a little bit, and then I go over to the Rangelog website and enter information there. Now, I didn't have the same problems that I had with my phone on the website. Information was sticking. It was being entered, and nothing was being lost. I keyed a bunch of stuff in on my phone, and I was furious when all that information I keyed in was lost. So immediately I'm thrilled that the stuff is working on the website. However, it has some quirks. Sometimes the page hangs and you get a really long wait time waiting on rangelog.com. You know, the little status thing is spinning. So sometimes it can be a little stressful, but it's still in the earlier stages of development, and there is just so much potential I see in this thing that I'm willing to deal with a few quirks and some bugs along the way. So a couple of days ago, maybe a week and a half ago, I entered a bunch of information for local ranges, firearms, and just some really basic stuff so that I could start keying in information and referencing information. So when you enter something into the shot log, the more information you have built into your profile, the easier it becomes. So there's a lot of drop-down menus. So when you enter in a drill, you use a drop-down menu to pull the ammo in. You pull the firearm in. You pull the range where you shot the drill at. You pull the drill itself in. So the more information that you build into your personal database, the easier it is to enter information later. So I went through, I entered some stuff, and then today I spent some time entering in the actual drill that I shot, the pistol forearm drill. I had a little bit of trouble with it. I ended up losing the first drill that I put in due to the website hanging, and just my impatience. I waited 4 or 5 minutes, and it timed out. Had to enter it all over again. But the second time around, the data was entered, and then everything synced up to my phone, so we were in good shape there. So basically what this whole discussion topic boils down to is, what do I think of the Rangelog website and Android app? And when you compare the two, there's a lot more functionality on the website than there is on the Android app. A lot of the apps that I've used that allow you to do both, work with both a website and the Android app, they're typically the same. I don't know whether it's just the way the API works or how it's set up, but the information matches across platforms. In this case, there is more available to you on the website than there is on the Android app. So for instance, if I shoot a USPSA match and I want to enter competitive shooting data into my range log, I have to do that via the website because the Android app doesn't have the option to pull USPSA drills at this point. It will later, but right now it doesn't. There are a couple of other things that the website has that my phone doesn't, which is a little frustrating because I tend to like using my phone more. Typically, I prefer sitting in front of my laptop and entering the information, but since everything is drop-down menus and keying in little tidbits, I want to be able to do all of that on my phone at the range. And what I found today was I really couldn't do that. I had to be at home entering in data. Maybe once I get my profile built up enough, I'll be able to more easily enter data with my cell phone. But for now, I'm pretty happy with the way the website works. You know, again, it's got some bugs and some quirks, but all in all, it seems like a really stable platform. Granted, there's some timeouts and stuff, but it seems like it's got a ton of potential. I'm the type of person that loves to take notes and have records of things. So when I go to the range, I bring my cameras along so that I can record the session and then reference it later. You know, what did I work on? How did I shoot? You know, what was I doing that worked? What was I doing that needed work? 6 months from now, I want to be able to look back at something I did today and see the progression in skill. So, you know, I'm that type of person. I just love having lots of information at my fingertips. And range log, it just gives me a ton of options to do that without having to watch a video from start to finish to see what I did and what I worked on. It's just sort of a way to get everything down in writing as opposed to having video of the range trip. And having the option to access that data on the go via cell phone I think that's just really cool. The community seems to be building around it. More and more options are added daily, or maybe not daily, but more options are being added constantly to range log. And you know, I really like seeing that. There's a premium membership which you get a free trial of when you first sign up. Mine has expired and I wasn't going to pay for a premium membership at this point because it's still in the early stages. It's kind of buggy. I don't want to be paying a premium fee for beta testing, more or less. So at this point I downgraded to a basic membership, which means I had to drop a couple of firearms. You're only permitted 5 with a free membership. And that was the only real hurdle that I ran into with downgrading my account. Now again, I'm not using it to the extent of its abilities, but you know, for what I'm using it for, it seems like a great tool that you know, I really look forward to using more and more, you know, as I do more range trips and shoot more USPSA and eventually get into reloading, because I would love to have a digital copy of all my reloading data. I'm a real stickler for having data when I'm doing something like that, and not having a handwritten logbook is really important to me. Having something on the computer that I can access with my phone, it just seems like an absolute win for me. But that's just my basic feeling on rangelog.com and the rangelog Android app. And if it sounds like something interesting, you should definitely head over to rangelog.com and check it out. So basically that's going to run us to the end of the episode. I feel like I'm losing my voice a little bit. I'm getting a little bit more congestion, and I think it's going to be time to hit the sack really, really soon. So with that said, I want to thank you for sitting through episode 10 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltInPA.com. You know, sorry for not being a little more energetic. I really wanted to have the party hat and the noisemaker and stuff like that, but it just didn't work out, and I thought, you know, I better just do without and get some sort of episode down before, you know, the full-blown cold kicks in and I can't do an episode. So again, thank you for watching. If you want to get in touch with me, you can do so via my blog, WaltInPA.com. You can reach me on Twitter, which is @WaltW. I'm on Facebook, Google+. Email me at walt@waltinpa.com, or you can go to waltinpa.com and click the contact button and fill out the contact form. And I'll do my best to get in touch with you, you know, to answer any questions or cover topics you would like to see on the show. If you've got some feedback, you can do so via blog, comment, email, Twitter, whatever you feel like. I don't really care one way or the other, just as long as you give me some feedback and stuff. So again, thanks for watching, and I will see you later.